Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take the heaviest corporate reports, the most complex strategies, and just distill them down into the insights you need.
And today, we are tackling a huge story of reinvention. We're looking at a global brand, Canon, that is frantically transforming its entire business.
Right, everyone knows them for cameras and printers, but that's not really the story anymore, is it?
Not at all. They are pivoting hard, moving away from those consumer products and into these really high-growth industrial and medical fields.
And the stakes couldn't be higher. They have this thing, their Phase 6 management plan, which wraps up in 2025 with some incredibly specific targets.
Incredibly specific. We're talking net sales of 4.5 trillion or more and an operating profit ratio of over 12%.
So our mission today is to figure out the strategy behind that pivot and, frankly, to see if they can actually pull it off.
To really get it, you have to start with their core philosophy. It's this concept called Kyosei.
Kyosei, right.
Yeah. It means coexistence. And it's this, broad vision of a society where everyone can live and work together happily. It's their long-term ethical foundation.
That's the big picture philosophy. But the modern company, especially under CEO Mitarai, seems to be driven by something a bit more ruthless, an intense focus on profit.
Oh, absolutely. And where that came from is just a fantastic story. It's rooted in what he calls a bitter experience when he was working in the U.S. back in his 30s.
A bitter experience.
Yeah. A tax officer basically sat him down and challenged him. Said, if your company's profit isn't higher than the interest you'd get just sticking your money in a bank.
Then what's the point?
Exactly. What is the point of the business?
Wait, you're telling me a local tax official's comment on basic cost of capital completely reshaped the management philosophy of a global giant?
That's the story. He realized they were just chasing sales, scale over actual profit. That single conversation flipped his entire approach 180 degrees.
And that's where his famous saying comes from, right? Be deliberate in counsel, decisive in action.
Precisely. Analyze everything, be thorough, but once you decide, you execute. Fast and without hesitation. And you can see that discipline play out over decades.
In their excellent global corporation plan, phases 1 through 5.
Right. The early phases were all about fixing the financial structure, getting that profit focus embedded. Then, once the foundation was solid, they started making acquisitions.
Planting the seeds for the new growth areas.
Commercial printing, network cameras, and the big ones, medical and industrial equipment. That's when it all started.
And none of this would even be possible without their technical foundation, their R&D.
You can't overstate how important that is.
Yeah.
Their track record is, well, it's pretty much unparalleled in Japan. They've been #1 among Japanese companies for U.S. patents for 20 straight years.
20 years.
Yeah. And that's not just a nice little plaque on the wall. It's a war chest of intellectual property that lets them jump into these incredibly complex fields. Without that IP, this whole pivot is just talk.
Okay, so let's unpack the two biggest bets they're making, the riskiest ones. Let's start with the medical group.
Right. So organically, they're doing okay. Sales were up almost 8% in 2023, mostly from their high-end diagnostic imaging machines. But the real pressure point is market share.
And specifically market share in the United States.
Exactly. The U.S. is the benchmark. If you can succeed in that medically advanced market, it validates your entire global strategy. So they have this clear mandate, get to a 10% market share in CT systems.
And they're trying to build credibility for that. I see they're setting up a marketing center right next to the Cleveland Clinic.
A very strategic move. But, and this is a huge but, the financial data shows just how painful and expensive this is.
You're talking about that massive financial hit they just took.
I am. In 2024, the medical business booked a goodwill impairment loss of $165.1 billion.
Okay, hold on. For anyone who doesn't live in the world of corporate accounting, break that down. What is a goodwill impairment in real-world terms?
It's basically the company admitting, after the fact, that they overpaid for an acquisition. In this case, their big move into medical with the Toshiba medical purchase.
So the profits they expected from that deal just aren't showing up as quickly as they had hoped.
That's it. It doesn't mean the business is a failure, but it's a clear signal that growth in this sector is fiercely competitive, and the margins are a lot tighter than they projected. It's a very expensive fight.
So with that kind of financial pain, they must be betting on some kind of disruptive technology to save them.
They are. And that bet is called Photon Counting CT. PCCT.
Okay.
It's a complete paradigm shift. A traditional CT scanner measures the total energy that gets through a patient's body. PCCT, using tech from their Redland acquisition, actually detects and counts individual X-ray photons.
Individual particles. What kind of a difference does that make for a doctor trying to make a diagnosis?
It's all about precision and safety. By counting photons one by one, you get way more detail about the tissue the X-rays are passing through. That means much higher image quality for earlier, more accurate diagnoses.
And you can do it with less radiation.
A lot less. Their goal is literally global, #1 image quality and low exposure. This is the kind of tech that could fundamentally change clinical practice.
A powerful card to play. Okay, let's switch gears to the industrial group, which, unlike medical, seems to be firing on all cylinders, especially in Asia.
Oh, it's very robust. The demand for semiconductor lithography equipment is huge, especially for making power devices. That's what really drove that almost 10% sales growth in Asia and Oceania last year.
But the really big story here, the long-term gamble, is something called nanoimprint lithography, NIL.
The ultimate gamble, yeah.
It sounds so simple. People describe it as just stamping circuits onto a wafer. If it's that easy, why is it such a massive bet?
Because that simplicity is what makes it so impossibly hard. I mean, think about it. Conventional lithography uses these incredibly powerful complex light sources, EUV, to etch patterns. NIL just presses a mold onto the wafer. The challenge is doing that with perfect nanometer-level precision over and over without the mold tearing the circuit when it lifts off. The physics involved are mind-bending.
But if they can perfect it, the upside is enormous. That energy consumption number is just staggering.
It's the killer feature. NIL can work at the 2-nanometer level and beyond, so it's right at the cutting edge. But, and here's the kicker, it uses less than 1/10 the power of an EUV system.
1/10.
In a world of soaring energy costs and ESG pressure, that is a game changer for a chip fab's total cost of ownership.
So why isn't everyone doing this? What makes it Canon's specific high-stakes bet?
Because they've been working on the proprietary tech for decades. It requires a whole ecosystem of unique masks, defect controls. It's not something you can just decide to do, and now they're backing it up with serious scale.
The new factory.
A huge new factory in Utsunomiya, Japan. It's set to start operations in late 2025 with the capacity to build over 300 NIL units a year. This is them going all in.
Okay, let's ground ourselves back in the businesses that still pay the bills. The printing group. The office printing market is, well, it's mature. How does that segment stay profitable?
They're pivoting. They're moving away from just selling hardware and towards selling B2B solutions. First, they're leaning into the hybrid work trend with secure, cloud-based printing services.
So it doesn't matter where you're working from.
Exactly. But the real growth is in digital commercial printing, high-volume catalogs, posters, and industrial printing for things like labels and packages. That was boosted by their acquisition of Edale in the UK.
It's about workflow, not just ink on paper. And how's that changing their manufacturing?
They're doing a major overhaul. They're consolidating some production. But here's the interesting part. They're bringing high value-added manufacturing back to Japan.
Reshoring.
It's a strategic move. Keep the complex, high-margin stuff in-house where you can control quality and consider outsourcing the low-end commodity models.
And what about the imaging group, the cameras that made them famous? How do you stabilize that business when everyone has a smartphone?
You don't fight the smartphone. You focus on the high end. The professional and enthusiast market for interchangeable lens cameras has actually stabilized. It's all driven by these incredible high-value mirrorless cameras like their flagship EOS R1.
So you see the casual photo market and double down on the creators.
Precisely. But the real growth engine in imaging isn't traditional cameras anymore. It's the network camera business.
Right, through their acquisitions like Axis and Milestone.
And that segment is flying. Double-digit revenue growth last year. And they're expanding way beyond just security. They're using video analytics for in-store marketing, for traffic management, for factory automation.
So they're turning light capture into business data.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So to manage all these global moving parts, operational integrity has to be key.
It's non-negotiable. They have a very centralized logistics system for efficiency. And they're also very committed to ethical standards, like joining the Responsible Business Alliance.
The RBA.
Yeah, that means they're enforcing human rights due diligence across their entire supply chain. They even vet new acquisitions against those labor standards.
And that compliance focus is really clear when you look at a very charged issue, conflict minerals.
It is. After the Dodd-Frank Act passed in the U.S., they became very proactive. They launched deep investigations to make sure that minerals like tin, tungsten, tantalum, and gold aren't coming from conflict zones in or around the Congo.
Which is really about maintaining access to critical markets like the U.S.
It's absolutely about compliance and ensuring their supply chain is clean so they can operate globally without restriction.
Okay, let's talk about the money. Where does all the cash flow from these huge businesses actually go?
Their policy is very clear. Priority number one is growth. Operating cash flow goes straight into R&D, M&A, capital spending, fueling the transformation we've been talking about.
And after that?
After that comes shareholder returns. And they've been pretty aggressive. They increased dividends in 2024 and did a huge 100 billion share buyback last year.
It all comes back to that core philosophy we started with, profitability. They seem fixated on return on equity, ROE.
They are. They stated explicitly. Their cost of capital is the absolute minimum hurdle for any investment. Their ROE hit 9.4% in 2024, which is good, but their targets are really ambitious.
10% or more in 2025?
And a long-term goal of over 15%. It's not just about getting bigger. It's about getting more efficient and more profitable across every single business group.
So, to wrap this whole deep dive up, what we're really watching is a legacy giant making a massive, maybe even existential bet on the future.
I think that's right. They're leveraging that deep well of IP, that 20-year patent leadership, to muscle their way into high-margin industrial and medical tech. It's a tough, expensive road, as that medical impairment shows, but it's probably the only way they can hit those huge 2025 targets.
So the final question, the one we want to leave with you, the listener, is about the potential for true disruption. Think about that nanoimprint lithography. Here you have a company pouring capital into a technology that can make 2-nanometer chips using less than 1/10 of the power of the current standard.
A massive energy advantage.
If NIL really works at scale, that advantage doesn't just help Canon. It could fundamentally rewrite the entire economic model of semiconductor manufacturing for the whole world. That is the market shift to watch. That's all the time we have for this deep dive.